And we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Happy Wednesday. I'm Ruby from Real Dog Box. I am joined by Alisha Ardiana. She is a certified professional dog trainer and the owner of Empathy, which absolutely love that name. You couldn't have picked anything better.
Thank you.
And we're going to be talking about training today, specifically reinforcement and how the role that food plays in training and different types of reinforcement. It is sort of an odd time of the day, but we are both on the West Coast, right? You're in San Francisco.
Correct. That is correct.
So for anybody that's joining in and you got to run, don't worry. We are going to repost this later on Facebook. And you can drop in any questions into the comment section and we'll pull those up. We're going to be chatting for about 30 minutes or so. So any questions you guys have, make sure you bring them up. Alisha, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be connected with you guys.
Yeah, me too. You know, Kay Stewart, who is one of our dog nutrition researchers and writers, she's helping us craft our raw food nutrition course. She spoke so highly of you. Remind me how you guys know each other.
So I went to Notre Dame, so University of Notre Dame, and I have a biology degree, and I graduated in 1995. And when I was there, I believed I was going to be a veterinarian. But part of the problem when you're getting your undergraduate is that you need to have certain coursework in order to apply for vet school. And I needed animal experience. And so I found Kay Stewart, who ran the Fryman Life Science Center. And so I convinced her to actually run a nutrition course for us. And so Kay and I have been reconnected throughout the years. I was a veterinary technician for 20 years. And then I became a dog trainer in 2014. So Kay has been in my life this whole time. And I'm so excited that because when we did that nutrition course in 94, I guess, it was all about kibble.
Yeah.
It was all about the big box foods. It was all about, yes, nutrition is important, but no one ever talked about what it tasted like.
Right. Yeah. And in my talks with Kay, we have weekly meetings. And as we're talking about the course, she's sort of shared this paradigm shift that she's experienced since creating that course many years ago. And she's just, you know, on the complete opposite side of the spectrum now.
Yes.
Is that sort of where you are? Has that been your
Absolutely.
experience?
Well, you know, it's funny you asked that. The reason why I became a veterinary technician was because of my work with Kay. And I spent 20 years in that field. And everything I was taught was do it to the animal. Don't hurt the animal. Don't hurt yourself. And it wasn't until about 20 years in that I started thinking about how animals felt about, well, yes, we have to inject you, or yes, we have to take blood, that I really decided that I couldn't do this anymore. And so then I started trying to figure out how I could help animals in a way that felt to me more organic. And that is when I discovered positive reinforcement. And everything in the beginning was, oh, there's a scary thing. Here's a cookie. There's a scary thing. Here's a piece of kibble. And it wasn't working.
Yeah.
It wasn't working. And so it was really delving in and looking to what is reinforcing to the dog. And also it was really thinking about the value of the food. So I'm now very interested in using food to help dogs, but I don't think food is always the answer.
Right.
I think that often the dog wants safety. Often the dog has an unmet need that isn't being addressed, and food is not the answer to the question. But what I feel very strongly about when working with my clients is that we need to have a hierarchy of food. And when I say a hierarchy of food, I mean that we need to figure out what I call the hourly wage, the time and a half, and the double time.
Okay.
So I want us to think about how big you feel about what's going on and how big you feel about the food. And that is where you guys are going to come in.
I love that. I love that. Okay, so we are going to talk about different levels of food and different levels of reward. Let's back up a little bit. Reinforcement, generally. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Reinforcement means I gave you something after you did something, and it improves the likelihood you're going to do it again. So if I call the dog to come and I give the dog a treat, the dog is more likely to come in the future. But I often think that people underestimate how much work it is to call your dog to come.
Sure.
And I think they overestimate what food they're offering. But positive
Mm,
reinforcement means that the amount of work you did has been sufficiently rewarded.
got
Does
it.
that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we're going to find that our audience, our viewers, may have a lot of different training methods that they have tried and found some things haven't worked for them, or may realize, which I think is part of what you're saying, is it's not as easy as like, hey, come, and that's it. We sort of have to build up to that. And I think there are different levels of that reinforcement. Let's just use recall as an
Right.
example.
Mhm.
And as general as you can, obviously, and we talk about this in food all the time,
Yeah.
every dog is different and isn't
Correct.
going to respond
Correct.
to our rewards the same way. But if you can sort of go through that.
So if I call a dog to come and I don't feed the dog will probably come 25% of the time. 25% of the time, I'm compelling. The rest of the time, the world is much more interesting. If I call the dog to come and I do like kibble or like a zook, well, that's like minimum wage. So now my dog is going to start doing the math. Do I want to keep doing what I'm doing, or do I want to come and see what the human has? But if you start to think about chicken, cheese, steak, baby food, we want to start looking at what is compelling to the dog. And this is where I really love the idea of novelty. I want the dog to hear come and be like, ooh, that's that word. I
Mm-hmm.
wonder what I'm going to get this time. And I think that often people identify, oh, my dog loves baby food, or oh, my dog loves this certain chicken jerky. But here's the thing, I was just in Hawaii for a week. I ate poke every day. I ate delicious fish every day. Monday night, I made spaghetti. Because even though I loved eating fish for a week in Hawaii, it lost its novelty.
Sure.
So, what I really love about what you guys have to offer is a variety in what we're asking the dogs to eat. This
Yes.
morning, I had my wife do a taste test, and you guys had given me the pig kidney and the turkey gizzard. And so my wife asked the dog to sit, and then she said, go, and she threw the treat. And the turkey gizzard, the dog ate the turkey gizzard and came racing back. The pig kidney, she liked it. But my wife could see she was more excited about the turkey gizzard. And that's what we're always trying to see. If I ask you to do something and I feed you, how excited are you to do it the next time?
Yes, yes. And you're absolutely right about variety. It's not just the novelty from a nutrition standpoint, it's what different benefits are each of these foods going to bring. And I find it so interesting that the dog went after the turkey gizzard, because usually the organ meats are the highest level. That's what they're going after.
Right. But also, didn't you say that you're not sure how much food that your dog is motivated by?
Oh, yeah. He's not. I mean, it's not his thing. And go figure. I like start a dog food company, build my whole life around it, and I'm like, all right, you're the star of the show. And he's like, nah, not interested.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that happens sometimes. Well, let me ask you then, is it possible for food to become negative to the dog if it's not used properly?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. So, and this is, this is one of the struggles we have in vet clinics. All the vets, God love them through COVID. It's been terrible. But I do believe there is work towards fear-free pets, low stress handling. And so what can happen is the dog may be eating at the vet, but then if the dog is licking the peanut butter and then the dog is injected while they're eating the peanut butter, the dog may make an association. When I eat peanut butter, I get injected. So it's entirely possible that if we are feeding while doing something stressful to the dog,
Mm-hmm.
that we can change the perception. If you're out with your dog and your dog barks and lunges at other dogs, and if you see the dog across the street before your dog does, and you go, okay, I've got my hot dogs, I'm going to feed my dog and distract my dog. Well, if every time you feed your dog hot dogs and then your dog sees the dog, your dog actually may believe when I eat hot dogs, that means dogs are coming.
Yeah.
So it's all about the timing. It needs to be the weird thing happened and then something good happened.
So you're saying we're not treating them before we turn them away from the dog.
Correct. Yes.
We want them to see the dog and then focus on you, whatever that cue is.
Not necessarily focus, but I want it to be an association. The dog appeared, we did something really fun, but it has to be the timing. But again, a lot of times when we are trying to help our dogs with cooperative care, meaning that we're trying to make grooming and nail trims and brushing easier for the dog, I think we can sometimes think that, oh, I'm just going to feed the dog while I'm trimming the nails, and that we can literally poison the food because the dog associates the yucky event happening in conjunction with the eating of the food.
And no matter how good that food is.
Yeah. I mean, I know for me, when I was a kid, I was sick and I ate lime jello. And now I don't like lime jello. So the good news about food is that there's lots of foods out there. And this is where I think a lot of times our clients get stuck, and that they are like, oh, my dog loves this. And then they're afraid to deviate from it.
Yes. And so, they're not only afraid to deviate from it because they think their dog isn't going to like it. There's also the fear of an upset tummy, diarrhea, loose stool. And then you get stuck in this box, which is like, okay, well, this is the only thing my dog can have. And you're not doing them any favors.
Right. But at the same time, what I love, so I'm going to give a shout out to my client, Morris. Morris, we're trying to not have Morris gain too much weight because we were using cheese and he loved it. But then he's a Pekingese mix, so he's putting on a little weight. I started suggesting, can you start testing any of the foods that you're eating? Now, I'm not saying give your dog, your Korean barbecue chicken, but I said, can you start test driving and seeing if Morris likes anything? We discovered that he loved his dad's apples. So now we have a really strong reward that's actually healthy for the dog. So it's really trying to think outside of the box. And again, I'm not here to say, give your dog your Korean barbecue chicken, but my dog enjoys when I have popcorn and I give her a piece of popcorn.
Right.
My wife will roast a chicken like once a week, and we always save a piece of the chicken breast for my dog. And that's what we often will use for the cooperative care. So it's thinking about the social facilitation, in that often we don't realize the benefit of sharing our food with our dogs.
Right. It's huge. And I think it's a lot easier than we think. I see a few people are just dropping in, so I'm just going to pop in and let you guys know we're talking about training, reinforcement, and how food and novelty in particular plays a role in that. I'm with Alisha. She's the owner of Empathy. Love that. And so the topic, there's a follow-up question to what we were just chatting about, which is whether food can become negative to the dog if it's not used correctly. And we've determined yes. And I think the follow-up question to that is, can you undo that negative association?
That's a good question. So whenever I'm thinking about changing behavior, and this is what I learned from Amy Cook, who's Playway Dogs, everything we care about is the ratio. How big are your feelings about what we're asking you to do? How big are your feelings about what I'm offering in compensation? In my opinion, if I have, let's say that dog, loved hot dogs, and then inadvertently the hot dog became poisoned, I would rather just forget the hot dog and start looking for new food. And again, I agree with health. I am a big fan of boneless, skinless chicken breast, but let's be honest, with all the inflation right now, it's running $5 or $6 a pound. I'm very fortunate to live in San Francisco, where we have SF Raw, and they distribute really, really wonderful, sustainably raised meat. And so I've been buying beef heart, and they all make fun of me when I come in there because I will buy a giant beef heart. And it's like $3.20 a pound. And then because I'm married to a chef, I will just boil the heck out of that thing. And then I'll chop it into chunks, and I've got it in the freezer. I really love beef heart because it's going to be a lot less fat. Boneless, skinless chicken breast is somewhere around 40, 45 calories per ounce. Beef heart's more like 30. So I've been exploring organ meat more. I've been
Mhm.
delving into kidneys. I've been checking out gizzards are also really low in fat. I don't do much with liver. I try to be careful about liver because I do know it can have some side effects. And when I'm thinking about, again, not having a dog get diarrhea, I'm much more likely to reach for beef heart than like chicken heart. The bigger
Yeah.
the animal, the less the fat.
Right. And not only is it lower in fat, when we're talking about that particular body part, heart is so rich in taurine. And we don't have to get into the whole heart disease,
Yeah.
DCM scared, all of that today. But that is one of the things that is so infrequently fed and underrated. We eat chicken heart in our house.
Okay.
It's one of our staples. And it's so good for us, and it's one of the things that's just so easy to pop. We use it as also like our recommendation for pill poppers.
Yes, it is nature's pill pocket.
It is.
It is.
But yeah, and I try to encourage people to feed variety. If you don't want your dog to get tired of something all the time, and I never even think to mention the training aspect of it because my dog's not food motivated. So, sort of stepping away from food for a second, what do you do in those instances if you find that they're not food motivated?
Well, I'm always curious about why is your dog not food motivated? What does that look like? The first thing I'm going to ask is, have you done a gut check to make sure your dog's gut is healthy? So I've had a lot of clients. We live in San Francisco. We get a lot of dogs with Giardia as puppies. They get put on metronidazole, and then the dog's stomach is never right after that.
Mhm.
So in all honesty, if someone tells me their dog is not food motivated, I'm going to put a pin in that because I'm going to want to know, have you done a gut check? And we're really lucky to live in the Bay Area because we have animal biome, and that
Mhm.
you can send your dog's poop in and get a 60-page analysis, and they'll tell you all the things that are in your dog's stomach. So that's my first question.
Yeah.
Second of all, I'm going to ask, what behavior are we trying to change? That's the second question, because again, it's all about the ratio. If your dog is terrified of garbage trucks, then maybe just offering food afterwards isn't going to really fix that ratio. So then it's going to be, what I like to do is, there's a scary thing, let's go do something that has food as a reward. But I'm
Mhm.
also a very big fan of, what are the events that you enjoy doing? Do you like playing ball? Do you like going to the beach? Do you like playing tug? Because this is when we can start to change the ratio. Because again, maybe you hate going to the vet, but what if we cruise by the vet, say hi to the techs, and then we go to the beach? This is what we really want to start thinking about. And this is where I start encouraging my clients. It's not just about food, but can we identify hobbies, interests, and activities,
Mhm.
often which include food, to be a bigger picture? And that, again, classical conditioning means A happens and then B happens. So the phone rings, there's someone there. Garbage truck appears, food happens. But often you're too close,
Mhm.
it's too scary, lots of other things are going on. So I tend to be much more about playing games where there's a garbage truck, we're going to jump up on this platform. There's a garbage truck, I'm going to say go, and I'm going to throw a treat and you're going to chase it. And this is when I think we can really start changing behavior, is when food is part of a game. I think this idea of, again, I did something to you and I fed you, it's not going to work. But
Yeah.
it's also really thinking about your treat delivery. If I ask my dog to sit and I say yes and I feed her by mouth, that's not bad. But if I ask her to sit and then I say go and I throw the treat, that's way more fun. If I
Sure.
ask her to sit and I say ready and I throw up a treat and she catches it in the air, that's more fun. So this
Mhm.
is when, again, you can start looking at, is it more fun to chase the treat? Is it more fun to catch the treat? And also thinking about textures. And that's why I was so excited by the sample pack that you guys sent me. Anchovies. Oh my God, that's such an interesting texture and flavor combination. You've got the crunch and the scales, and then you've got the kidneys, and you've got the gizzards, and then the things to chew on. So we're really trying to think about a variety in texture, a variety in treat delivery beyond just food.
Sure, sure. I do see some people have questions about gut checks, what I'm going to get back to here in a
Oh, yeah.
second.
Okay.
But
So, yeah.
well, I want to go back to one thing. I have seen some dog trainers withhold food. You know, we talked about kibble maybe being lower value on that hierarchy of food. Is that something that you recommend to make the training session
No.
better?
No, I mean, if I go to a math test and I'm hangry, I can't think. So I am much more about, so my dog is a Papillon. So my dog needs 250 calories a day. You know how difficult that is? So I tend to weigh out her food, and that most of her food is in puzzle toys that she looks for. And then some of it is withheld for training. And then I have calories set aside for training. But no, this idea of a hungry dog is a trainable dog. If I'm hungry and cranky, I can't learn. And that was one thing when I was in Hawaii this week that was interesting, was that we were traveling with children, and it was seeing, we were snorkeling and they were having a great time. And then those calories dropped and it was game over, and we've got to get the kids fed.
Yeah.
And that's what's really important to understand is, again, I have a Papillon, so I may limit her calories so that we still have calories available for training. But I tell my clients all the time, have a light meal. The same way, if I'm going to a cocktail party, well, I don't go to cocktail parties anymore with COVID, but if I was going to a cocktail party, maybe I would eat less at lunch so I can go eat those meatballs and have that extra glass of wine.
Right.
But we have to understand that a dog, in order to learn, cannot be stressed about eating.
Got it. Okay, so Luciana wants to know how we get a gut check. Interesting to mention, we have Animal Biome coming on to chat with us next week. Yes. I am not a stranger to sending off my dog's poop to a lab for testing, but if you know about it, I'd love to hear your take.
Yeah, so Animal Biome is a company in Oakland, and the premise of it is, and you can look online, Huberman Lab at Stanford, they did several webinars about gut health. Behavior Vets, you can buy their gut health webinar about dogs. Huberman is people. But what we want to recognize is, we often, people and dogs alike, if they've gone through antibiotic treatments, it wipes out the gut flora. And then what repopulates is often not necessarily the most beneficial bacteria for the human or the dog. So if you have questions about your dog's health, if you're working on training and it's not where you want, if your dog's poop isn't where you want, if your dog is super itchy, what you want to do is you contact Animal Biome. They send you a kit. You take a poop sample, you send it in, and then they will send you within 3 to 5 weeks a 60-page report where they tell you what are the contents of your dog's stomach. I had one client, he found the dog stray out in the East Bay of California, and the dog had horrible poop. And when he did Animal Biome, 60% of the dog's bacteria was bacteria that should never belong in a dog. So then they have poop pills, and you have these, and they're tiny capsules too, which is great for small dogs. And you give your dog 30 days of poop pills, and then you can do a gut recheck. I admit I did Animal Biome last fall. I have the gut recheck sitting on my desk. I have not done it yet. So I need to do the recheck. But my dog had a false pregnancy a year ago, and she had a round of IBD, irritable bowel. She was in the ER for 3 days. And when she came out, I put her on probiotics, but something just seemed off. And when I sent the poop sample in, my dog did have a moderate imbalance. And I say this as someone that feeds my dog well, clearly cares about food, did all the probiotics, and I still didn't have what I wanted for my dog.
Sure. Yeah. And, there's a lot of reasons why you might send off a poop sample for your dog.
Yeah.
One of the things that I recently learned about, I had Dr. Connor Brady on here a few months ago, who talked about gut health and behavioral issues, and how sort of, the beginning of what you said earlier, when you've got a hungry dog or a dog who has an upset tummy, why are they going to want to listen to anything you're saying?
Right. So what if you think the dog, isn't trainable, but what if the food is actually giving your dog a stomach ache?
Yeah. Yep.
So what if you're actually, So anyway, I'm not a gut expert, but I definitely feel strongly that when someone comes to me and says their dog is not food motivated, the first thing I'm going to ask is, what's your history? But then I'm also going to ask, well, what are you feeding your dog?
Right.
Because let me tell you, I get so many people that are like, we're doing this kibble that we get at Costco, and we're getting Zooks, and we're getting milk bones. Well, it doesn't make me want to eat either.
Well, before you knew about us, and you guys, we met through a mutual friend and colleague, and the whole idea about using food as a high value reward is definitely not new. So what were you using? What do you recommend to your clients?
So what I like to think about, so like I said, I have like a hierarchy. So I think about it as an hourly wage, time and a half, and double time. And now this is just mine. Again, like everyone's going to figure it out. But for us, like low value, like easy stuff is like Honest Kitchen kibble. It's easy. It's got a small breed. It's got a large breed. So that to me is just an easy thing. Then I start looking at what I call the middle of the road. And so that's when I want single protein, limited ingredient, dry, again, I think your treats are fantastic. So I'm super happy with those. I also will do, I like some other freeze dried. I've actually also been doing, Great Jacks. They're cat treats. So when you have a Papillon, you're always looking for small 1-calorie treats, because a Charlie Bear is 3 calories. And again, when you're working with a Papillon, that's difficult. So what's cool about Great Jacks is that they have really, really tiny. So that's your next goal, is to get me some 1-calorie treats, or do some like really small beef liver chopped up. So again, and then I've really enjoyed working with the gizzard and the kidney. That's been making my dog really happy. So that's been higher end. But in general, when I think about, I'm going to call you across the beach in California, I am going to ask you to put up with a blood collection. I typically go for fresh food.
Yeah.
But chicken, we will grate Parmesan cheese. And then I have bowls for training. So I have a bowl that I can grate a bunch of cheese in, and then I'll put a pinch of it in the bowl. So then I have a tiny little portion of it, and I'll trim one of my dog's nails, and then I'll say dish, and I'll hold out the bowl, and she can lick a tiny amount of Parmesan cheese. So this is where you really want to be careful about sodium. I joke chicken, cheese, hot dog, steak, but I don't really do commercial meat, like lunch meats. I really worry about the sodium. And with cheese, I also have to be really careful about sodium and calories.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We had someone come in for a consult, a nutrition consult, and she said that she'd switched her dog to a fresh food diet, and she had a tiny, tiny dog. And I say tiny because our Anatolian's about 150 pounds. So anything below 100 is just small for me. But she shared after numerous consults that every day she would eat a little bit of cottage cheese and also feed that. And I'm like, you've got a 10-pound dog. Like, 1 spoon goes a really long way. And so I think, just sort of for everybody that's listening here, you do have to be careful with the higher calorie things like cheese. Any of those dairy products can really be tough on your dog if they're not used to it.
Whole milk yogurt. But at the same time, I could eat the yogurt container and then scrape it out to the best of my ability, and then let my dog clean that out.
Oh yeah. And that's an activity in itself.
Exactly. And that's what I really want people to think about. The definition of social is enjoyment of shared activities. Think how nice it is to sit in a restaurant when it's full, assuming, again, outdoors, COVID, vaccination.
Right.
But think about the energy you feel, and you turn to someone and you say, did you get the spaghetti? How was that? Oh, okay, cool. So we think about how we like stuff because other people like it.
Right.
Why aren't we doing the same thing with our dogs? Why aren't we encouraging our dogs to enjoy the food? I can also say, again, because I've got a Papillon, yesterday I took the turkey gizzard and I put it in a mug with some water, and I put it in the microwave for a couple minutes. So then it got nice and soft.
Yeah. And
then she was like, that's what made it really special for her too, was that just kind of trying to increase the liquid. We as humans have like 10,000 taste buds. Dogs only have 2,000. So when we're really trying to make an impact on behavior, anything that you can do that's going to increase how it smells to the dog. Think about the difference between dried cilantro and fresh, dried basil and fresh. So even just thinking about warming up that food in a little bit of water to help increase the smell. because the dog's sense of smell, that's what we care about.
Right.
They don't see well, they don't taste well, but they smell well. And this is what I also love thinking about is what can we do to play games where we have our dog find the food? Because when your dog is seeking the food, when you're seeking and finding, that's a dopamine release. So
Right.
as long as your dog is in seeking mode, then that's going to increase the value of the food. So when I get people that say, oh, I feed my dog out of a Kong, I'm like, well, that's great. But once they figured it out, it's not that special.
Yeah.
But when you put the dog in, send your dog to the crate and then go hide the Kong. Now we're actually giving the dog something to do. And we're giving them an opportunity to practice the normal behavior of foraging in order to get that reward.
I love that. I'd actually never thought about that.
Oh, yeah.
Using like hiding the Kong itself. We do a hide and seek all over our backyard or like within our house. Snuffle mats also, if you're in an apartment and you don't have a whole lot of space, those work really, really well. But hiding the Kong in itself, I would have never thought.
Okay. I got our Papillon at 10 months. I flew to Washington State on February 14th, 2020. No idea about COVID. I specifically got this Papillon because she was a high energy dog and the breeder needed her to go with a trainer. I got her back to San Francisco and we had shelter in place. I had that perpetual kid on a rainy day who was like, what are we doing? What are we doing? I got so frustrated during COVID. I took her Topple. I wrapped it in 20 dish towels. I took that Topple. I wrapped it in a king size down comforter. I became the queen director of making this dog work for her food.
I love that. I love that. There's something else that's been a lot more popular these days, which are the lick mats to sort of spread the food around as opposed to have it all crowded in the bowl so that they have to work for it.
Yeah, everything is really trying to think about what can we do for variety. It's also understanding that licking and chewing are going to be more meditative. And then I do like also having a collection of puzzle toys. We all used to do Kongs. We're all doing Topples now. Topples are way easier, way more accessible. I'm at the point where I've named my dogs Topples. So blue, orange, and green. I can set them all out and I can say blue and she'll go to blue. I really like all the balls that they can roll and that stuff comes out of them. But it's really thinking about children. They don't just have one book. They don't just have one Disney movie. So it's really thinking about rotating and really looking again for that novelty. People don't understand adolescence. Adolescence is the time. 4 things: how to stay safe, how to stay fed, how to make friends, how to reproduce. We need to focus on novelty for the dog during adolescence. It's really important.
Is there a particular age where you find they just don't care for any of those games?
Oh my God, adolescence. It's like, okay, I think of adolescence like being a kid. When you're trying to earn money, where are you going to babysit? Where are you going to mow the lawn? Where are you going to walk your neighbor's dog? And the more things that you find that you want, the more you want to work for that money. So adolescence, and I look at adolescence, it's between like 6 months and like 2 years. For me, I take the months of the dog and I correlate it to the years of a human. So when I've got that 12-month-old dog, that 13-month-old dog, that's like a 13-year-old kid. 8th grade dance, boy-girl parties. They better have a smartphone. They're trying to get on the internet. They may have a secret TikTok account. And if you let them off the internet, they might hack in through the Nest camera. That's the time you need to up your game with your dogs. There's a question here that says, can you overdo games like Find It, or is it okay to do daily? I play Find It with our dog twice a day, breakfast and dinner. And then we also have bonus rounds when things are going sideways. So I live in the Mission District of San Francisco. So if we have a lot of chaos going on outside, I'll say, let's play an extra round of Find It. In my opinion, with my dog, 3 rounds of Find It is a good place to start. So she goes to her crate, I hide the Topple, she comes out and finds it. 5 is the most I do. The 5 searches is the most I do. And when I say I'm hiding her Topple, I'm putting like a morsel of food in it. We're not putting meals in the Topple. And in general, 5 is good. But then it's like, but I'm not done yet, Mom. I want to do something else, Mom. And I always think about, we're leaving Disneyland. Now we're going to go get ice cream. And that is when you want to then transition your dog into an easy thing to chew on. So something I'm curious about, because I'm not sure of your whole catalog. I'm always looking for people to have that daily chew, and then that kind of, again, that time and a half, and then like that double time. So I always want dogs to have something easy to chew on. So in the case of my dog, what I have is a turkey tendon. So a turkey tendon is basically like a chopstick. But I want people to really be thinking about every day your dog has that easy thing to chew on. And then I want you to be thinking about, okay, what is something that will take you like 30 minutes? So in your case, is that going to be the beef aorta?
No, the beef aorta is going to be like the lighter end of the spectrum.
Right. Well, depending on the size of the dog.
Sure.
Again, yeah,
that's true.
Is it going to be the duck neck? Is it, and then if it's, okay, I've got that hour Zoom call and I need to make sure that you are busy. Is that going to be the pig ear? Like, this is what we really, again, we want to always be thinking about it again, is you have something every day that you chew on, but then we have special occasion things. Is it going to be that smoked bully stick? This is what we really need to think about, is, again, the calories of the food. But I also think it's really important to have that chew thing that only does last you 5 minutes.
Right.
Because then it's going to be, we had a fun game, then we're going to have an easy chew, then it's going to be nap time.
No, I love that. I think that is great advice. I think we often revert back to the same thing. It's just like going to a restaurant and you were there last time and you loved this particular dish so much that you're like, I'm just going to get it again. And then again, and never try something different, which our dogs want something different.
There's another question here. Any suggestions for raw feeding toys besides the Topple? I am a big fan of recycling. So like I said, we were in Hawaii for a week and we asked our friends to save their toilet paper rolls, because a toilet paper roll from Hawaii smells different than the one in San Francisco. So we had like 8 toilet paper rolls to bring home. So I'm not saying give your dog the used pizza box, because that could have oil, but I'm a big fan of takeout containers. They're wax lined, wipe them out. If you get a sandwich from a local deli and it's wrapped in butcher paper, wipe that out. Giving your dogs opportunities, the Rice Krispie box, the mac and cheese box. It doesn't have to be fancy. And for me, what I do with raw food, we have different raw food places in San Francisco. I will buy the big thing of raw food and then I break it up we have silicone ice cube trays. And then I'll break up the raw into smaller, different kinds of trays. And I have little baby trays and I have bigger trays. And then when you've got that mac and cheese box, you pop that in that. Then you put the mac and cheese box in the LaCroix box. None of this has to be complicated. None of this has to be expensive.
Yeah. And you know what? I hadn't thought about how something, the same box from a different place, absolutely to our dogs smells different.
My wife brings home toilet paper rolls from the restaurant. When I worked in a vet clinic, I brought them home. We have to really understand the dog, 1/3 of your dog's brain is dedicated to sniffing. Our dog, through COVID, we did a lot of nose work, and our dog's favorite game after everything is finding people's lost stuff. So when we have friends come over, the dog runs to her crate and she will sit there. And if I don't jump on it very quickly, she will start barking. And then my friend will say, "What's wrong?" And I'll say, "Do you have your phone?" I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Show her your phone." So they'll show her their phone and I'll say, "All right, go hide it." And they'll go hide the phone in the house and my dog will go find it. And my friends are like, "This is crazy." But if you think about it, the dog lives in a house that is surrounded by the smells of me and my wife. So just a different smell. Like, think about, again, like when you were a kid, you start looking into books, you start thinking about music, you start thinking about bands, sports. Dogs want to collect smells. So just being able to look for novel smells. During COVID, we looked for vegetables. So we'd show her the onion and then we'd hide the onion. We'd show her the garlic. We got to the point where we'd have 20 potatoes and we'd hide the potatoes around the house. Just giving your dog a chance to look for novel smells is mind-blowing to your dog. And that's what you should be focusing on during adolescence, is building up your dog's capacity for smelling and enjoying novel foods. that go with that opportunity.
I love that. Can you talk a little bit about when we take our dogs on walks? And this is particularly interesting to me because I have a reactive dog and we go on pack walks often to work on some of that reactivity. But when we're home in a comfortable sort of environment, I do like to let him sniff a lot all over the place.
Yep.
How necessary is that for dogs? Because a lot of times I see people going on very strict walks. You're in a heel and this is where we're going. Can you talk about that?
So here's the thing. You know what heel is supposed to be? Heel is supposed to be, I'm the duck hunter. I am taking the dog with me and I need you to heel with me because now we're going to go sit in a field for 8 hours. Heel is when you're off duty in anticipation of work. Meanwhile, heel has no place in my life. Heel is fun for dancing, and Denise Fenzi does heel, and she's super cool with that. But when I think about walking a dog, it is not about getting my steps in. It is about the dog getting his sniffs in. So I use a 10-foot leash. I use a 10-foot leash when walking any dog. I'm not saying I have a dog 10 feet out ahead of me, but what we know is when we are walking with that dog in a heel and that dog is right next to us, we are inhibiting the capacity to sniff.
Mm-hmm.
The point of the walk is choice, freedom of movement, mental stimulation. Choice does not mean meeting other dogs. It's not the point of the walk. Choice does not mean meeting other people. I'm not here to make new friends on the walk. Choice does not mean eating that chicken bone. Choice does not mean eating that spare rib. Choice does not mean diving into the bushes and eating God knows what you found. But I give dogs chances to sniff. 5 seconds is the bare minimum. But here's the thing. If I'm walking my dog and I need to get somewhere before something closes, I'm not going to bring my dog.
Yeah.
Because that's not fair to my dog. But to me, you want to sniff this for a minute, have at it. What was hysterical when our dog, we got back from Hawaii Sunday night. The dog is now back. My wife is in hysterics. Every time we've gone out for walks these first 2 days, she has been running to all her places to check her pee mail. And she has been peeing on more things. And we also go dog spotting. So here's something to think about. When you have a reactive dog, your dog, there's so many things involved. But in my opinion, most reactivity happens because the dog does not want to be interrupted on the walk. There's a lot more to it than that. It's a lot more complicated. But it doesn't mean that you hate dogs. It just means you don't want to meet them. So my dog is reactive because we live in San Francisco and we have way too many dogs and we've been ambushed too many times and we've done a ton of work on it. So now we're at the point where we go dog spotting. So we'll be walking and I'll say, I see a dog. And I'll point it out to her and then we will follow that dog at a safe distance, so like a block. And then when it pees, I say, okay, let's go check it out. And we run up and she gets to sniff the pee and then she pees on it. And people always laugh when I say that. And then I say, do you follow anyone on Instagram you don't know? It's the same thing.
Yeah.
I am obtaining information about you in a way that I don't have to meet you.
Right. I love sniffing their pee mails. I love that.
Yeah. So yeah, a 10-foot leash. We're very lucky in the Bay Area. Again, we have like every animal company we need. We have Hightail Hikes, which is a woman-owned business in Oakland, and she does custom-made biothane leashes. So I do 10 feet in the neighborhood. And when I say 10 feet, I live in the Mission District of San Francisco. But let me tell you, you've got a kid coming up to you on a bicycle on a sidewalk, and you can say, go and throw the treats up the steps of a Victorian steps. Your dog gets to run the full 10 feet up the steps. The kid goes by. So being able to promote sniffing, because that's at the end of the day, we play games to avoid people and dogs. But at the end of the day, my long view for my dog and all my clients is that sniffing is more important than anything else. And the frustration of San Francisco is the density, the number of people, moving cars. But the salvation of San Francisco is the density, because all that foot traffic, oh, there's so many smells to follow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I absolutely love the different perspective that you've just offered. Instead of when if their trigger is a kid on a bicycle going by and really restricting their movement, you're offering an alternative. You're saying, okay, well, let's go over here then.
Yeah. Active avoidance. Yeah. I had a border collie that I worked with several years ago. I couldn't get him out of the house at first, did a ton of work in a long line. And he got to the point where we could go hiking in very narrow trails. He would hear the jogger before me. and he would leap like a gazelle out of the way and the jogger would go by. This is what we have to recognize. We see way better than dogs do.
Mm-hmm.
Our vision is, 20/20, they're 20/75. They see movement better than we do. They only see the colors yellow and blue. They see everything else in shades of gray. But here's the thing. They hear better than we do, and they smell better than we do. So when we can actually form a team where they become the alert system and we become the action system, where the dogs, all the reactive dogs I walk, they tell me when there's something coming.
Mm-hmm.
And then I say, okay, what do you want to do? All right. And then I can say, go, and throw the treat up the stair, and the dog goes running up. What I also love is demonstrating to my clients that the food does matter, and that there are some days where it's like, oh, look, I have new beef liver today. Look how much more attentive the dogs are.
Mm-hmm.
And again, bringing it back to food. Really, really important that you guys have so many opportunities for your clients to have that organ of the month, to have that low risk opportunity. Because I do get those people that buy stuff from the big box stores and they get this huge package of something and the dog hates it. And now they're like, what do I do with it? So I really love the idea that you guys have this opportunity for people to try different stuff on and say, okay, how do you feel about turkey gizzard? How do you feel about pork kidney? And then if you can then, like I said, with me, I took your treats and I cut them up into tiny pieces with scissors. And then I've just got a Ziploc bag by the front door. And when I go out with the dog, I grab the Ziploc bag. So now I've got a dried product that I think is pretty good, that is different than what we usually get. And then again, we see dogs, we do something. And having different food, the dog's like, oh, this was really fun. Oh, I haven't had this before.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. All right. I think we've answered most questions here. We've talked about negative association with food. We talked
Do
about
I think that this could contribute to pickiness? If I have someone that says their dog is not food motivated, my first question is, does your dog have a healthy gut?
Yeah.
That's my first question. Yeah. I've seen several clients throughout the years who it turned out their dog either had upset stomach, an imbalance of bacteria, or the dog was allergic to it. And so it was eating the foods that made them sick. I can also say personally that I used to be very ambivalent to beef. I'm kind of like a quasi omnivore. I'm married to a chef, so beef is more of my life than, and I love shared experiences, but beef used to give me a stomach ache. And then a fellow trainer asked me if I'd ever taken pancreatic enzymes. And I had never heard of them. And Rainbow Grocery is our local awesome vegetarian store here. And I went to Rainbow and I'm like, what are pancreatic enzymes? And they sold them to me. It is not a placebo effect. I take pancreatic enzymes and I can eat a hamburger. And it is not a placebo, because there were many times that I would forget to take the enzymes. And about 3 hours later, I'd be like, oh, I don't feel good. And I would have belching and gassiness and yuckiness. And my wife would be like, oh my God, you forgot to take your enzymes. But again, we have to understand, even though you may enjoy the process of eating, there may be other things going on that don't make you feel right.
Right, right. And I think I want to say that this question came about when we were talking about not offering that variety. And they're only eating. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you look at the Science Dog, which just came, Science Dog just came out with their latest book. They are definitely promoting this idea of we need to rotate our dog. If you're doing kibble, you need to rotate. And you need to really recognize that your dog should not be eating the same thing every day.
Right, right. And, and I'm so glad that I brought you on, because it's far beyond the nutritional aspect of things. It's the mental enrichment. It's keeping them excited for something new and wanting to build that bond with you.
Yeah.
We do that through food.
Yeah. And a lot of these things aren't expensive. Go to Safeway or go to your grocery store and get a $1 jar of meat baby food. See if your dog likes it. If your dog likes it, my dog doesn't like baby food. So again, 90% of the dogs I know think meat baby food is amazing. But then if your dog likes it, well, then you can pour that in the Topple and freeze it. Then you can pour that on the licky mat and freeze it. And this is what we really want to be thinking about, is giving our dogs more time in eating.
Yep.
Being able to really spread it out. And it's not saying you have to work for your food, but it's recognizing that when we're actually giving the dog a chance to participate in the process, like I said, adolescence, how to stay safe, how to stay fed, how to make friends, how to reproduce, you've got to give your dog more chance to participate in food.
Sure.
When we were in Hawaii this week, my wife made delicious salsas for us to go with the fish, and the girls wanted to help. My wife said, why don't you juice the limes? She's not going to give them the knife and have them cut up the fish, but they got to help make the food.
And be part of that activity.
Participate in how they're eating that food. It's really critical for their development.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you so much, Alisha, for coming on and talking about training and food and reinforcement. Where can our viewers find you?
So my website is empathy.com, EMPAWTHY.com. My Instagram is AJ Ardiana, and my day job is walking reactive dogs. And then at night and weekends, I'm training and doing consults with my clients. And my specialty really is helping people think outside of the box and understand that if you tried food and it didn't work, that's just the beginning of the journey. That's not the end.
Thank you. I love that so much. Thank you guys for joining in. We will be reposting this. So if we missed any of your questions, I foresee a future together here.
Let's talk food.
All right. Y'all have a good afternoon.